Hi, this is Sher, president of Dealer eTraining. I want to talk about something very important. Matter of fact, I want to talk about an article that I wrote a few months back called "It's the Internet Manager's Fault." Have you read it yet? If you haven't, check out the link that I'm about to provide here for you at the bottom of this video. Very powerful stuff. This has happened to internet managers all over the country, and it still happens to them. People that go in and run BDCs, people that are either very good at what they do or very poor at what they do. And the only way to know that is to really measure their skill and really get to know what they're thinking. I'm talking about being a dealership that every 2 or 3 months turns over BDC managers. Eventually you hire somebody that's great, who's well known, has a proven track record, comes highly recommended by your vendor friends. You turn around and you hire this person, you put them up to work with your general sales manager, who really shouldn't have as much control as he does, but he does because he's helped you get to a certain amount of cars, and now you trust him with your whole life. And you allow that person to go in and do different things. We're not going to even get into that. Okay, but what I'm talking about is, this happens in dealerships all over the country. And as this happens in dealerships all over the country, you start to see a pattern. Hire one manager, they work 2 or 3 months, boom, get rid of them. Hire another manager, they work 2 or 3 months, boom, get rid of them. Hire another manager, and next thing you know, 2 years goes by, and you've had 7 or 8 managers. Does that sound familiar? Are you a dealership that's had 7 or 8 managers in the last 2 or 3 years? Don't you think there's something wrong there? Are you just putting the blame on your BDC managers? Are you blaming your other managers for not producing properly or not working properly with your internet or BDC department? Are you blaming yourself for maybe not being as involved as you should as a dealer principal? Think about that for a second. It's happened to a lot of people. I've been a victim of it myself, actually, where you come into a dealership, you make things happen, you start to improve processes, you turn around your Saturdays from doing 60 appointments to over 100 appointments, and then in turn, they turn around and say, well, this isn't working out. Maybe I'm looking for something that doesn't exist. When in reality, you don't check the other people around you. Okay, it's always the BDC manager's fault. Why? Okay, why is it that if the BDC manager tries to produce reports and wants to have a meeting with you to go over the results, you turn around and say you're too busy for them? Okay, you're too busy for them, and eventually 2 months goes down the road, and you turn around and say, well, you haven't given me anything. Well, why? Because you as a dealer principal haven't even given me time so I can show you how your money's being invested. Another situation is you have people in upper management that sometimes cannot be trusted. You know, if you're going to be at the dealership 6 days a week as a dealer principal, you have to monitor everything like a hawk. I can tell you from experience, I worked in a dealership where both my owners were at the dealership every single day, 6 days a week, and they were monitoring me like a hawk. Yes, they rode me, they gave me a hard time, and they required me to meet with them every morning, go over my results. And you know what? At the time, when I wasn't even a business owner, I was just a manager, I didn't know any better about running a business like I do now, being a president of a company. And at that time, I was thinking, this is crazy, this is driving me nuts. And yeah, it was difficult, it wasn't easy, but guess what? We improved results every month. The dealership grew every month. The dealers was very happy with me, and we made money. And guess what? After time, it just became systematic, and I did it, and I followed along with it. I made a very healthy income, and I did well. The dealership did very well. It's one of the top dealerships in the country now. So when you go from a situation like that to a situation where you go into a dealership and there's a dealer that's there 6 days a week, and yeah, he counts his money and he does what he has to do on a dealer principal level, but he doesn't quite question his GM as much or GSM as much. It gives them more power, especially when maybe they had an interesting background or history. Well, what happens is then things like this happen. You hire a manager, gets thrown under the bus. Hire a manager, gets thrown under the bus, and so forth. So the whole key to this message is, before you start blaming the internet manager, and some of them might be guilty, I'm not saying that they're not, start to look at yourself. If you've been through 7, 8 managers, 10 managers, however many managers, multiple managers, let's say for instance, in a 2 or 3 year period, maybe you need to check your operations. Maybe you need to look back, sit down, drop the ego just a little bit and say, maybe I'm doing something wrong. 7, 8 managers in 2 years can't be wrong. Think about that. And maybe you had a bad batch of managers, but 7 or 8 can't be wrong. Okay? It's like people always used to tell me, you need to sit down and evaluate yourself. And I do evaluate myself. And I find my shortcomings. Listen, everyone's got shortcomings. Nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect. But the reality of it is, even though I'm not perfect, I'll look back and I'll sit there and I'll figure out what could I have done better. And that's what dealers need to do. That's what general managers need to do. Before you start pointing that finger, look at your analytics. We just recently did a story on automotiveinternetsales.com on one of my clients, Eric Nichols of Apple Honda. And they asked him, what's the one thing that you can recommend to internet managers? And he says, his key words were analytics. He was talking about analytics. You should, measure your analytics, always know what's going on in your dealership, and always be able to answer, your dealer principal, with the right answer to his question. Because that's the reality. You have to be able to source everything. You have to know what's going on, and don't hold back. And that's the key to being successful, having a successful relationship between dealers, general managers, and BDC directors. So again, I tell you, if you're experiencing shortcomings, if you're going through 5 to 7, 8, however many managers in one department, it doesn't have to necessarily be BDC, it could be sales. If you're constantly having turnover, look at your process. See what's going on. Or perhaps there's too many dealership politics going on. Just think about that and look for ways to improve it. And if you need ways to improve it, if you need some ideas, you can always reach out to me. My email address is here, my website is here.